fantasy wide receiver rankings ASMR. Imagine if I started every video like that, or went with every video like that. Okay, so on a serious note, welcome into the Fantasy Advantage, where I'm giving you the advantage in fantasy football. Today, I want to get into top 10 wide receivers in my ranking for the fantasy football season of 2025. Now, I'm just cutting right to the chase. I'm not playing around. I don't want to make this video too long, so I'm just going to get right into it. I'm going to just jump right in, starting off with Ja'Marr Chase at number 1 and Justin Jefferson at number 2. And honestly, I can mix and match them. In fact, I'm just going to tie them together because it's simple. They're the two that everyone has on the top of their list, including me. And there's a couple other guys who have potential to finish in the wide receiver 1 spot, but you're definitely lying to yourself if you don't actually put them at the top 2. I don't care about JJ McCarthy or any of the outside stuff that people like to nitpick. Obviously, Justin Jefferson is QB proof. These two are going to fight for top 2 barring injury. So, yeah, easy enough. Going to get right through those two. We don't have to dig too much into them. The 1 and 2 is Ja'Marr Chase, Justin Jefferson. Gun to my head, I'll give you Ja'Marr Chase number 1 because there's just a slight bit of uncertainty to what McCarthy is going to actually be. So I'll give you Ja'Marr technically 1. Now at number 3, this is one of my favorite guys this year, and honestly was one of my favorite guys coming out of last year's draft class. So he was a rookie last year, but I was a little tentative on pulling the trigger in all of my leagues because he went to the Giants, which is a situation I didn't love, but it was not worth holding back on. It's Malik Nabers. I know it's a little bit spicy, but he was top 7 last year, and he was in a a really bad cycle of QB play. He still had 29.7% target rate per route run, which was number 1 in the league. He also had 170 targets. That was like probably the most in rookies years, I think. And he only had 109 receptions. So obviously there was some problems with like catchable ball rates, and I don't really have the numbers right here. If I can find them, I'll put them up. But about 90% of those at least would probably be like terrible passes. So you got to think about how much more he could have gotten out of last season. And with somebody like Russ on the field, throwing him the ball, a vet who knows what he's doing and has a history of like actually playing pretty well, I think that his receptions and everything else, just like targets that are worth something, are going to skyrocket. Also, the coaching staff didn't change like at all on the offensive side, and I don't think schemes are going to change much, and Russell Wilson's going to want to throw the ball to Nabers as much as possible to help him keep a job after this year. So, yeah, there's no reason I see Malik Nabers not being in the top 3. Unless the next guy at number 4 has his year like he had about 2 seasons ago. And at number 4, I got CeeDee Lamb. I'm a Cowboys fan, so obviously this guy's special to me in fantasy and in actual NFL. But I love them. I love him. I love the guy. And he's honestly in the conversation for wide receiver 1 because he's done it and he has that potential. I just like Nabers' chances to really take off this year, so I'm settling with him at 4. Now, if you draft him ahead of Nabers or something, I'm not going to knock you for it. I can see your arguments, and like being a Cowboys homer, it's hard for me to do that, but I'm trying to be realistic here. Now, he had a down year last season, was still wide receiver 8, but this year he's got Dak Prescott actually healthy, and he's got George Pickens on the other side of the field, which I think is going to actually open things up for Lamb because somebody's got to cover Pickens. The guy's way too much of an animal, And the defense is going to have to put more attention on him and not just CD. And I do think that the running game does improve a little bit for Dallas. So that'll help kind of choke up defenses and keep the field opening up for CD. Outside of all of that, like, I don't think there's much more to explain. It's CD Lamb. Everybody knows what he is, what he's got, and he can potentially be the wide receiver one. So I'm going to just skip on to the next guy who I think we can have some more conversation about. And then my number 5 for this year, bumped my freaking desk, is Nico Collins. Nico at the 5 with a fully healthy season should be like one of the biggest locks. This dude who I was banging the drum for since he was drafted. I'll show a couple of stuff up here before he blew up. I talked about it on Twitter a lot. He's been a fantasy stud for the last 2 years. And he missed 4 games last year. And if you put in the game that he got hurt early in week 18 when they pulled the starters, and he still got 14.8 points. And also the game he came back, he was kind of on a pitch count in midseason. If you kick those out, he was scoring 19 points a game, which would put him at wide receiver 3 last year at that pace if he played all 17. He has a .612 fantasy points per route run in PPR, which is the best for wide receivers over those 2 years. And that includes a 3 yards per route run, which is also best in the league, and second most touchdowns per route at .02. If he stays on the field and plays the whole year, it's hard to argue him being outside of the top 5. And CJ Stroud getting another season to kind of mature a little more and get out of that sophomore slump, I think that's going to create a lot of opportunities for this offense. And Higgins being out there and creating some looks for the defense to have to pay attention, I think Nico gets a little more open, kind of like the CD Lamb thing. He has somebody who's actually helpful on the other side of the field. So yeah, Nico Collins at 5 feels a little spicy, but not that scary. Like, I'm not scared to stand on that in a 17 game season. I'm not afraid to stand on Nico at 5. At number 6, my dog. I'm gonna do like a dog for every list, or like dog of the day. So I always want to bring out like a dog when I'm doing these, because each section kind of has one that's like that dog guy. For this one, it's Brian Thomas. He was a massive problem for defenses last year, and a lot of that was actually with Mac Jones. And I'm starting to lose faith in Trevor Lawrence being the prodigy that he was supposed to be. But I will say that he's definitely more competent than Mac Jones. And in his final 7 games of the season last year for Brian Thomas, he was in for 84% of the snaps. He averaged about 21.5 PPR points and never had less than 13. That was only behind Jamar Chase and my boy Puka Nacua. His 3.12 out of yards out of the slot were the most of. Well, I screwed that up. His 3.12 yards per route run out of the slot were the most of any receiver who had at least 100 slot snaps. And his new coach, Liam Cohen, he's a slot guru. He had Kupp and Godwin in those roles over the year that Kupp went crazy, and then Godwin's last year when he was going crazy, and they were literally doing that. They were going crazy, and I do think that Brian Thomas, he's going to gadget him into so many different ways and getting the ball into this guy's hands that you're not going to be sorry that you played Brian Thomas or picked him even in the first round. Honestly, like, I wouldn't harp you for picking him in the first round. Kupp averaged 22.4 points, and Godwin averaged 19.7 under Cohen, which is another big factor of leading me to believe that Thomas has a big year. Easily in the top 10, without a doubt to me. Top 6 feels pretty good, honestly. I'm not scared of Travis Hunter. He's going to have some plays. He's going to have some games, but I think Brian Thomas, in my opinion, is the alpha for the team, and he's going to be the first look. Trevor Lawrence is going to want to throw him the ball. Liam Cohen is going to want to get him the ball. Their offense has a lot more going for it when Brian Thomas is very much involved in that offense. So, yeah, Brian Thomas at number 6. Okay, number 7. Somebody that a lot of people love. He's a darling for a lot of people, and I get it. I see why. His story's really good. He's on a team that everybody really loves and likes watching succeed. Everybody likes the coach, and if you haven't guessed it, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, it's pretty easy to explain with him. He's been really consistent. He's been the fantasy wide receiver 3, 3, and 7 in PPR over the last 3 years. He's had a PFF receiving grade between 90 and 91 over that whole time. He ranks first over every period of his career in targets per route run at 20.2%. He's also a red zone maniac. In 2024, he had the second most red zone targets with 31 in the whole league, and he had 23 receptions, which was the most. He tied McLaurin for the most red zone touchdowns with 9, and he had the third highest percentage of targets in the red zone from the total red zone passes for his team, which was 59.6%. And he had the most fantasy points in the red zone out of the season last year with 75.5. Red zone is where Amon-Ra definitely eats. It's not like he's bad between the 20s, but dude, he's doing so much in the red zone with Gibbs and Monty being on the field as well. It's insane. It's literally insane. I made a graphic the other night showing these red zone stats. It's insane, man. The only reason that I have him down on 7 instead of the 3, which is where a lot of people I think have him, is because I do think that the defense being healthy will actually ease up some of the needing to throw and move the ball down the field so fast so much. They won't be in as many higher scoring games, and I think the defense is very underrated after the injuries last year. I do think that they don't need to score as many points. They'll be able to control tempo and control game time and possession with their running game a little more, which is why I do like Gibbs pretty high, but that's my last video. Now, Williams, JMO, will also probably cut into his work a little bit. He's definitely become a critical part of the offense. A lot of people are getting really high on JMO, a little too high, thinking he'll be better than Amon-Ra. He'll be like a top 10 wide receiver. If Amon-Ra's on the field, quiet with all that noise, dude. Amon-Ra is the guy for the Detroit wide receiver room. JMO will get work, though. He's not going to get less. So I do think that will cut into his overall potential value and performance a little bit. So that does lessen my love for him a little. And his ADP is wide receiver 4, which I understand, but it's slightly too rich for my taste because Neighbors and Brian Thomas emerging and CD being back to normal, hopefully this year, it's hard for me to argue him finishing above those guys, especially Lamb and Neighbors too, because Lamb's going to be above Amon-Ra. He would have been last year if he didn't deal with the shoulder stuff and Dak didn't get hurt and they didn't play the last 2 games, yada, 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 whatever. Amon-Ra at 7, I think it's not quite his ceiling, but I feel like when the dust settles on the season, this is where he ends up. Now, Drake London is number 8, and I don't know why I just spatted it out like that, but London finally got his breakout year, and we've all been waiting for it, and I think it's finally consistently going to be here, and he's not going to fall back off. The offense for his first 2 seasons were really run heavy, and he had a mix of Mariota, Ritter, and Heineke throwing him the ball, which for obvious reasons are just not great, and probably why they were so run heavy. Once he had a competent QB, when he got Kirk last year, and they let them throw the ball more, he obviously took the hell off. The whole offense kind of did, honestly. They have a lot of good options there. But Drake London went crazy, and I don't think that's going to just go away now. He had 30 more receptions than the previous 2 seasons, and he was finally getting touchdowns and had 9 last year. And that's also with a game where he got hurt really early against Dallas. So a lot of the stats, and he was already started with a touchdown. So there's even more numbers he could have put up. His 11-yard ADOT from the slot was the second highest in the league. And he also had the most targets per route at 33% and 2.5 yards per route run in the slot. I screwed up my thing that I wrote down here, but yeah. He had the 4th most red zone targets and the 5th most red zone receptions, which put him in top 10 in fantasy from the red zone. What makes me rank him 2 spots lower than his finish from last year is Mooney's getting a lot of praise from the coaching staff through their OTAs and mini camps. I do think he is going to cut more into, I'm also a big Mooney fan. He's going to cut into the overall work that London got last year, which will change some of the outcome for the season. Also, Bijan having more positive big play regression that I explained in my last video in my running back rankings. I think that's going to take away a few more plays and a couple drives away from what London got to get because Bijan was unluckily getting tackled before he could get like 15 plus yards. Now, I know a lot of people go, oh, look at what happened in the games with Penix. Now, they were massive games. He was averaging 23.1 fantasy points a game, which I do think boosted his overall finish from last season because that's a lot of numbers for 3 games. But that sample size being so small and things like kind of the rhythm being a little different, I do think that it changes. I think that comes back down to earth a little bit, and he doesn't get that little extra booster of those last few games that he played that bumped him up to where he was. So I think 8 is pretty comfortable for me. He's definitely top 10. I don't think anything will happen to drop him outside of the top 10. I'm not even worried about that. It's just how high his ceiling is, and for me, sitting at the 8th rank feels right for me. Now the next guy at 9, he's an interesting case. I've been pretty bullish on him this offseason until the last month or two. It's Terry McLaurin. Was a little off of him because of contract stuff, and there is the potential of Jaden Daniels' sophomore slump. But let's just if we look at 2024, he obviously had his best fantasy season ever. If you look at his stats, they actually weren't too drastically different than usual, but the big change was his touchdowns. He averaged 5 touchdowns over the first 5 seasons of his career, and then it jumped all the way up to 13 last year. Now, there's been a lot of talk about that number coming back down. That's not a sticky stat. Touchdowns are definitely volatile, but I don't think it drops down as far as people are expecting it to. He's finally got a comparable, a competent quarterback who can actually make plays and change things for the offense for him. And what Terry does best is his what's that word I'm looking for? Contested catches, especially in the red zone. So he has 70.6% of contested catch rate, which is the league leader over his career in the NFL. For wide receivers with at least 20 contested targets, which he gets tons of them, and 3/4 of them he wins. He also scored 9 contested target touchdowns last year, which was most in the league as well. So if you just chuck screw it, Terry's up there somewhere, he's going to come down with a ball in the red zone and score you a touchdown. I don't think that's different. I think that's part of the plan for Terry. They want to build their red zone offense off of that, and I don't think that's going to change. He had the second best red zone reception percentage with 85.7% and second most fantasy points through the red zone with 64.5. I don't like that there's contract issues. That was like a big thing, kind of taking me away from really being a lot higher on him. But I think they figure it out. It makes you nervous, you know? And then Debo coming to the team will definitely have some effect. It's going to probably have a little bit of an effect on his red zone work. So there is something there with that, but it's enough to temper expectations and keep him at about the 9 for me. So just inside the top 10. But he is somebody I could see going a little lower. But I don't think it would go. I don't think it's possible to be outside of top 10. Jaden Daniels loves him, and he's the first guy he wants to throw the ball to. And I don't think that changes. Now, number 10 here, that's my boy, Puka Nacua. He's awesome, man. There's not much to hate on with him. He averaged 0.216 receptions per route run, 0.3 targets per route over the last 2 years, which are both the highest in the league. His 37.1% target share rate was the most in the league, with at least 75 routes that he ran in the last 19 years. 19 years, no one's had that. His 3.56 yards per route run ranks third in that same span of 19 years, only behind 2008 Steve Smith and 2023 Tyreek Hill. Yeah, pretty good company there. The problem with last year is he dealt with injuries, and he played about 10.5 games. If you take out the game that he got hurt, he did average about 20.4 fantasy points a game, which is freaking amazing. The only reason that I'm rounding him out in the top 10 is because he hasn't been on the field alongside Kupp that much, actually. They're like one or the other has been kind of usually hurt. So he hasn't had someone full-time next to him that's like a target hog, and Davante Adams is somebody who is definitely that. There's just some feeling like I've got this feeling about Davante and Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford. I don't think that Adams doesn't get the ball a lot. I do believe Stafford's going to love throwing to him. And no matter what, when you have that on the other side of the field, they can't both be so damn good that they, can be in the top 10. Somebody's going to suffer. And I do think that Puka's overall finish is going to hurt because of it. Now, his ADP is wide receiver 5. Feels a little bit high. I don't want him there because of this. You can get Adams at the wide receiver 19, and that feels like their production is going to at least be pretty close. So at cost, I think I'm staying away from him just because I do feel like Adams is just the better buy. But Puka Nacua at 10, he is a guy who I could be wrong about, and he could just go nuclear and crush it. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on him, though. My opinion. I really do feel right about him being at 10. So, yeah, that's my top 10. So I'm going to do another part, and I'm going to do my next 10, 11 through 20 in the next video. Just wanted to put this one out there, get you guys in on the top 10. This list is locked and loaded, man. I feel very good about this top 10. I usually tweet one out every year. This is the first year I'm putting out my videos, and I've never felt better about a top 10 wide receiver room this year. So thank you for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe if you enjoy. I put a lot of time, effort, and work into this, so it just helps me know that it's paying off. Again, I put my Twitter down in the description. I'm always talking football on there, so give me a follow. Let's chat, and yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again in hopefully a few days, but editing sucks. All right, have a good day.